Last time Woodstock seemed to be sailing happily in a straight line, midway between the shore on the left and the island on the right. At this point the wind switches from the starboard to the port side, and then a big gust comes along and it swerves 50 degrees to port and makes a beeline for the shore, and eventually it got tangled up in the trees on the shore, and that was shown in the part 1 video. We'd recovered the boat to the shore and refitted the LoRa telemetry transmitter, which had been left off by mistake. The wind was from the south-southeast, and we were supposed to be sailing this mission 5, which goes from the start to P1 to P2 and then back to E. But due to a bug in the software, we were actually sailing mission 4, which is the more ambitious one, going from the start to this distant waypoint P3, behind the island to P4, almost to the trees, and then diagonally back to E. What actually happened when we sailed this was that we ended up in the trees here. So we relaunched the boat with the telemetry working this time and sailed it under radio control up to about here, and then let the autopilot go. The idea being that we wanted to get out of this area here where the woods shield the wind and produce either a light wind or unpredictable wind. Right, I'm just going to keep this in fairly close view and let me know when it goes back onto the autopilot.
It's on the autopilot now.
Right.
But I'm going to take over it again and get it towards the waypoint. I don't know how near that is to the waypoint. See how it rarely lays over. And at that angle, the rudder becomes an elevator instead of a rudder.
So what's going? Can you give a commentary on that? What's happening? It's turning right round there, isn't it?
So yeah, so it's now. See if it just gets itself going in the right direction. It's pointing towards us.
It's trying to turn to port.
Yeah. So now it's goose swinging.
That's good.
And but the wind's then caught the back and swung it over. And it's coming back round to face us again.
So when it puts on full port rudder, it's not enough to bring that back.
So now it was goose winging then just for a second, but you see, as soon as it goes on to a port tack, the wind on its port side, it blows it flat, and the rudder, instead of steering the boat, is over at such an angle, it's just lifting the back up and down.
So I think I'll get my electric saw and cut the keel off halfway down.
Well,
and extend it by about a foot.
Let's bring it back and reduce the sail and see.
Okay.
See what impact that has.
Right. So Dick is going to bring the boat back under radio control. Right. So eventually Dick managed to sail it all the way back from near the island to the pontoon, but we're still complaining about the radio control going out of range and switching itself off. Right, well, Dick is going to shorten the sails in some way because we feel that the boat is getting blown over sideways and affecting the action of the rudder, and shortening the sails is certainly easier than lengthening the keel in the field. Meanwhile, I noticed on the telemetry that the autopilot thought it was going to waypoint P3, which was odd because there isn't a waypoint P3 in mission 5, which is what I thought it was doing. But I've just looked at the code and I see that there's an error. Whether you set mission 5 or mission 4, it always goes to mission 4. So that was the long mission that we had no intention of running, Dick. The one that starts here and goes a long way out in between the island and the shore, midway between, a long way out, and then with a view to going round the island. So perhaps that explains why when you had the boat out near the island, it was always trying to go over to in that direction.
Yes. So you've corrected that now, have you?
No, I can't change the software in the field. Well, I could do, but I don't believe in it. Do you want me to assist you with your knitting?
No.
Right, well, we launch it again, and Dick has furled the sails a bit, if that's a I don't know what the technical term is for this, but we shortened the sails, and it's going much better now, even though the wind has actually picked up. It's going on this long-range mission to go well beyond that island. And if we let it get out of radio control range, we'll have no way of bringing it back. It's not moving so fast now, is it? It's being sheltered by the trees on the left-hand shore?
I think so, yeah. But also this wind is, as you've found, gusty.
Yes. But it's still keeping, I mean, unlike before, it's not going mental.
No.
I think it's still sailing away from us, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to go quite a way further. You do realise that we could be here all night if we've got to pump up your rubber dinghy and I've got to row it out there.
I think I'm getting fit enough. I'd be quite happy to row it now. I think it's now, well, Monday's 4 weeks. So I think
is that what they told you?
Well, they said 2-3 weeks. Don't strain too much. And after that, you should.
That's all right then.
Whatever
I can
you
just
feel.
sit here and film you. No, so I can relax.
Yeah.
Well, talk about not rotating or anything now, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
enormously much better, but it's still moving.
I think the sail's probably more. That was the mainsail is more like the size of the one that Robin uses.
It certainly is.
The foresail might be a little bit larger.
Oh no, this is a bigger boat. It's heavier.
Yeah.
So his is 15 kilograms, ours is 22.
But given that the out at sea, the winds are
Well,
likely
it'd be
to
enormously much bigger, yes.
Yeah, so I think
We could
I
cut
think
it down
we
to
need-
this.
Yeah, we need to plan for a sail. No, oh, see, even that. Look, see,
Is that the waypoint, do you think? Or is it?
that
there it
it might have just been applying full rudder to turn the waypoint.
No, I think it's definitely on its second leg from P3 to P4,
So
I suppose
your
it is.
telemetry would be able to confirm.
Well,
that,
I
wouldn't it?
could actually go and look at that.
Yeah.
I'll stop filming.
Yeah.
So I went into my telemetry tent and I saw this rather nice track from S to P3. It's going slightly southwest of the way line, but possibly due to weather helm because the wind is from the south-southeast, but it definitely goes pretty straight to P3, hits the red circle and changes course to go towards P4. When I devised this course, I had assumed that with a south-southeast wind, if Woodstock went off course at all between P3 and P4, he would drift to the north. And then I saw, to my horror, that he appeared to be off course to the south and making a beeline for the northern edge of the island. And I feared that we would need to mount a rescue.
That's it, it's out of sight now.
So Woodstock is behind that island, the other side of the island, not moving very fast because there's a lack of wind, and Dick has got his Mavic, and we can see on the screen where the boat is. So while the Mavic was flying out to get into position, Woodstock hit the island, loitered there for a while, and then providentially bounced off it northwards. So here is the Mavic footage. Unfortunately, we didn't turn the recording on quite early enough, but we're looking eastwards across the northern edge of the horseshoe-shaped island, and you can just see the water in between the two horseshoes there to the right of Woodstock. So having bounced off something out of shot behind us, Woodstock resumes his course towards waypoint P4, and waypoint P4 is the blue thing in the top left corner on the shoreline, roughly speaking. Of course, the vegetation on the island is considerably higher than Woodstock, so it's shielding the south-southeast wind from the boat, so he takes the time to get going. At this point, Woodstock hits the red circle around P4 and tries to turn to starboard through the wind in order to orientate himself towards waypoint E. He turns a certain amount, but is unable to turn through the wind. So he continues in a slightly more southeasterly direction, apparently towards the shore. Here we're showing a close-up of the drone footage together with the telemetry. It's not possible to synchronize these exactly because of delays in the radio transmission and the fact that we haven't got enough bandwidth to put a full time stamp on the telemetry data. But what we see is that Woodstock is sailing at about 180 degrees heading towards the shore, and that's not all that much off the desired heading of 205 degrees, and so there's a fairly small error of 35 degrees, and the proportionate rudder that he applies is not enough to turn it off that course. Eventually, however, he gets nearly into the trees, and they are again shielding the south-southeast wind, and he's then able to make the turn in the lee of the trees, as it were, which we see happening shortly. Here we go. So he turns well beyond the 205 degrees that we actually wanted, and then tries to turn back, but he can't get back onto the desired course because it is basically just too close to the wind. So at this point Dick decided to bring the Mavic back because it was indicating 30% battery. So we just thought we'd get a view of the Horseshoe Lake and the activity centre. These are 400 kilovolt electricity lines joining national grid substations at Bramley and West Weybridge. They only carry 300 megawatts of power typically, so what could possibly go wrong? So what we're showing here is the last leg of the mission from P4 to E, speeded up 30 times on the telemetry only because we didn't have any video of it. And Woodstock spends some time faffing about up in the region of P4 until he eventually gets going in the direction he wants to go. But he quickly finds that he can't actually sail at exactly that direction because it's too close to the wind. And whenever he does turn into that direction, he gets into irons and finds himself sometimes being blown backwards. So here we are at the end of the pontoon. There's a gap here, but this is the rest of it with Dick, and there is the boat. It's programmed to come to this point, but we just hope that it succeeds and doesn't actually go back into the trees where we were about 5 hours ago.
Calm up this end, isn't it?
Yes, we could be in trouble here, couldn't we? I mean, you might need to intervene to do something, because it's not going to tack. And do you think we need to actually tack over to the
oh, I see what you mean.
turn it round and tack over, turn it to port and go that way, because it's got no wind to control itself there. Have you got control now?
I have control.
Okay, so that is at 17:58, 57.